Hi everyone. So I'm going to do the answers to the news feed post here. Have a look at the function negative 4x to the power of 4. That makes number 1 really easy. The degree of the function is always the highest exponent that you see in the equation. So I'm going to head over to Desmos, and as you can see, I've already graphed this function and I've listed the questions on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the degree. It's 4. Have a good look at the graph and try to notice some patterns right away. Notice that it starts to increase and it sort of looks like an M shape, if you will. And it heads back down here on the right. Question number 2 is asking for the sign of the leading coefficient. That's the number that's in front of the term with the highest exponent. I'm going to highlight the term there. The leading coefficient would be simply negative 4. Now, what's more important about that is the negative sign, not that it's 4. The 4 will, give us an idea of how much this function goes up and down, but the sign is really important. So I'm going to state here that it's negative. That's significant because it tells us the shape of the chordic function. So notice how it starts at the bottom and it creates this M shape and goes down. The opposite to this would be a W shape. If I got rid of that negative sign, realize how it sort of reverses itself. If I zoom out here, you notice how it loops back around and it goes to positive infinity. So that's why that sign is significant. The end behavior. Well, let's look at this graph one more time. And you're just going to ask yourself, as x approaches negative infinity, so if x is getting really, really negative, the graph goes to negative infinity. So that's the end behavior, and I'm going to go to a Word document to type that out. So for number 3, get rid of this. As x approaches negative infinity, y also approaches negative infinity. And if I copy and paste that, we go back to the graph for a second. Ask yourself the same question. As x is going to get really large, the graph itself is still going down to negative infinity. So I have to make sure to show that here. As x goes to positive infinity, y is also going to negative infinity. So that's your end behavior. The domain and the range. Well, since this is a polynomial function, we know that the domain is always x can be any real number. We'll put that here. X can be any real number. Now y, well, y can be any real number, but there is a restriction, and we have to remember that my y values are never going to get any bigger than that number right there. So the nice thing about Desmos is you can click on that point and it'll actually tell you the y value that corresponds to it. So y is never going to be anything bigger than 13.029. That's what Desmos is telling me. So y is going to be less than or equal to 13.029. That's how you state your range. And finally, the x and the y-intercepts. This is very simple. All you have to do is click directly on those gray points that you see on the graph, and it's going to tell you the x-intercepts one by one. So you can simply state 1.047, 0.269, negative 1.064, and negative 2.502. You can type those into the Word document, which I'll do, and I'll post so you have for reference. The y-intercept is right there, which is 0, -3. Notice how that's also the last number in the equation. That's not a coincidence. The y-intercept will always be that last constant in your equation. What else is significant here is that you can expect there to be 4 zeros or 4 x-intercepts at most. It's the maximum number that this function could have, because that's the degree of the function. It's a quartic function. It doesn't mean that the function has to have 4 zeros all the time. Functions can display different characteristics, but you're never going to get more than 4 zeros or roots if it's a quartic function. And likewise, if it's a cubic function, it can have a maximum of 3 zeros or 3 roots. So if you're okay with that, head back to the news post. I'll include the link to this graph and the Word document with the answers before you head on to do the quiz, and 5.4, which is an introduction to factoring.